Everyone. Welcome to the Kansas City Public Library Make Do Tell Story, episode number 3. I'm Jamie, and I am a youth librarian with the Kansas City Public Library, and I'm also a storyteller. And I have on a new storytelling shirt today from the Kansas City Storytelling Celebration, which I've been a part of for a lot of years. And it is sponsored through Metropolitan Community College at the Maple Woods branch, and hopefully we'll be able to have it in November this year. We'll see. Everything's up in the air. But there'll be some great storytellers. If so, we've had some really amazing ones. I've learned a lot from them. So today's story is going to be similar to the last two in that it is a cyclical story. So like in The Ghost with One Black Eye, basically it was the same pattern the whole way through with different characters, but basically the same pattern the whole way through. And then last week, the Anansi story, again, the same pattern with the same characters all the way through. This one also has the same basic pattern happening, but there's a little more complexity in that little things shift and each one builds on the other and plays off of it a little bit. So I think you'll catch on to it pretty quickly. So this one is called Lazy Jack. It comes from this book, Ready to Tell Tales, which is a fabulous book for you to know about. And when the library opens back up, we do have a copy in our system. The teller, and what this book is, it's basically all these really good storytellers, big name storytellers in the storytelling community have offered up a favorite story that they tell. And what they do is they make it available for all of us to tell as well. And all they ask is that you reference the book, Ready to Tell Tales, which is edited by David Holt and Bill Mooney. The story that I'm using is Lazy Jack, and Gay Ducey is the one who tells it. It's a story from England. So here we go. Once long ago, there was a boy named Jack, and Jack was lazy. He lived with his mother, and he was getting on up there in age a little bit. So he was maybe like someone who would have just graduated from high school. And his mother loved him very much. And so she thought, that's Jack. He goes out in the meadow in the summer and messes around, doesn't really contribute to the household good. And then he comes in and he asks for something to eat, and his mother always gives it to him because she loves him very much. And then in the winter, he likes to sit in front of the fire and warm his toes. And he doesn't do much more than that. And when he asks his mother for something to eat, she gives it to him because she loves him very much. But because she loves him very much, one day when Jack asked for something to eat, sitting in front of the fireplace, she said, "Jack, it's time for you to get a job." And Jack said, "What's a job?" And she said, "Jack, a job is when you go out into the world and you find something to do to help other people, and then they pay you for it." And Jack said, "Oh, that sounds like fun. I'll do that." And so the next morning when Jack woke up, his mother was already up and she had made him a nice little lunch and put it in a sack. And she handed it to him and said, "Go out into the world, Jack, and find a job." So Jack walked and he walked and he walked and he walked and he walked until he came to, shoot, I forgot what it was. Okay, so this is not good. Normally I would just, so you're getting to see me live. I think it was a farm. Let's just say it was a farm and we'll see if that works. If not, we'll have to go back a little bit. Note to self, don't do this when you're telling the story. Sometimes I go blank in the middle of things. Usually it works out a little better than this, but because you're storytellers too, I'm just giving you some background. So Jack went out, found a job. Farmer said, yeah, Jack, go out. I need you to hoe up my garden. Actually, it was a field. I need you to hoe the field, get rid of the weeds, and then when you're done, at the end of the day, I will pay you for your work. And so Jack took the hoe that the farmer handed him, and he began to hoe and get those weeds out. And he hoed and he hoed and he hoed all day long. And he was really tired at the end of the day. But when he got back to the barn, he handed the farmer the hoe, and the farmer was so pleased with his work because he'd gone out to look that he gave Jack 3 gold coins. 3. Well, Jack had never seen money before because he had never worked. And he knew that his mother was going to be so pleased with him. So he took those 3 coins in his hands and he began to walk back home. And he walked and he walked and he walked and he walked. But Jack didn't have the best attention span ever. And when he got to this creek, this pretty wide creek, he looked down in it, and one of his favorite things to do in the summer was skip stones. And he looked down at that creek, and that spot right there, it had a nice wide spot and was really still. And he looked down at the coins, and he'd never found a rock that flat. He thought this coin would skip and skip and skip, and he wanted to find out. So he put the other 2 coins in this hand, and he reared back and he flung his stone. Zip, zip, zip. Like 5 times. It skipped 5 times. He'd never made it past 4 before. He was so excited. And then he began to walk on home. Well, he got to this really big grove of trees, tall, straight trees, high as he could see, almost brushing the sky. And he looked up at that and he thought to himself, I wonder how high I can throw one of these coins. So he took one in his hand, held one in the other hand, and he reared back and he threw that coin into the sky. Whoa! It disappeared over the top of the trees and came down somewhere. But when he went to look for it, he couldn't find it. But he still had 1 coin left. He had 1 coin left. And he knew his mother would be so proud of him. So he walked and he walked and he walked until he got home. He opened the gate, closed it behind him, walked in, and the coin was gone. His hands had gotten so slippery with sweat because it was a hot day. Shoot. All he had left was the story about how he'd made 3 coins. And when he told his mother, she said, oh, Jack, I know you can learn. Said, what you should have done was take those 3 coins and put them in your pocket, just like that. And Jack said, oh, that's what they're for. What a good idea. I can do that. I surely can. And so Jack went to bed that night. And when he woke up the next morning, his mother had another sack lunch for him. And she handed it to him as he went out the door. And Jack walked and he 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 walked. And he went right past that farm he'd stopped at before. And that was fun. But he thought he would see what other kind of work there was, what other kind of job he could get. And this time, he, like the next farm over, there was a dairy farm. And the farmer, it was early, and the farmer was just getting ready to take his cows up into the pasture so that they could eat for the day. And when Jack asked, do you have any work that I can do? The farmer said, oh, Jack, your timing is perfect. Yes, I could use your help. I need to get these cows up to the pasture. And so he told Jack exactly what to do, and he sent him off to do it. So all day long, Jack tended to those cows, and he brought them back in toward evening. And the farmer said, and now we get to milk the cows. And so he showed Jack how to do that. And Jack sat down on a stool in the yard, and he had the bucket underneath the cow, and he milked the cows. And it wasn't long until he had a whole bucket full of milk, and then another and another and another. And I'll tell you what, Jack was really tired at the end of the day, but the farmer was so pleased with Jack's work that he gave him a big jug of milk. And Jack was so pleased with that. And he remembered what his mother said, and he took that milk and he poured it in his pocket, just like that. And then he began to walk home. And it wasn't long until that milk had gone all down his leg and dripped and just like made a big puddle in his shoe. His sock was soaked. And as he walked, he heard stomp, squish, stomp, squish, stomp, squish, stomp, squish, all the way home. And it was another really hot day. And by the time he got home, his mother could smell him when he got to the gate. Because milk does not smell good. I know, because one time I spilled a whole big glass of it in my car in the middle of summer. Oh, it smelled terrible for days. So Jack told his mother the story about the milk that the farmer gave him. She was pretty sure she knew that story by the time he made it to the porch. And his mother said, "Oh, Jack, what you should have done was take that jug of milk and put it on your head in the jug and carried it home." And Jack said, "Oh, what a good idea. I can remember that. I surely can." And so that night, Jack went to bed. And when he got up the next morning, his mother had a sack lunch ready for him. He took it and walked out the door. Well, he decided that he liked this working, but he wondered what else might be out there. And so he walked and he walked and he walked and he walked and he walked past the farm where that field was all nicely hoed, past the pasture where the cows would be going up to feed that day. And he walked into a little town. And in that little town, not very far away from that dairy farm, there was a cheesemaker. And Jack, he knew all about milking cows. He wanted to see what happened after you did. And so he knocked on the door and asked the cheesemaker if he needed any help. And the cheesemaker said, "Jack, what perfect timing. Yes, I just had my main cheesemaker call in sick today, and we have so much cheese to make. Come on in." And so Jack went in. The cheesemaker told him what he needed him to do that day, and Jack did it. He poured the milk into the molds. He did whatever else that cheesemakers do. And by the end of the day, Jack was really, really tired. And the cheesemaker was so pleased with all of Jack's work that he said, "Jack, you have done such a good job. I have a nice round of cheese for you." And he handed it to Jack, a nice soft cheese to take home to his mama. And Jack remembered what his mama had told him the day before. And he looked down at that cheese, and then he put it on his head, like his mother had told him to do with the milk. And he began to walk home. He walked and he walked and he walked and he walked. And if you're thinking that it was another hot day, you would be right. And it wasn't long before that cheese started to melt down over Jack's head, forming almost like a hat and then dripping. He thought it would taste pretty good, and he was right. He caught a few drips as they came down his face, and then the whole mess just slid off him. And by the time he got home, he was riper than the cheese had been. And his mother could smell him again from the time he opened that gate and let himself in and then closed it behind him. Jack told her the story about making cheese all day, and his mother just shook her head and she said, "Jack, what should have done was take that cheese and wrap it in some nice wet leaves to keep it cool. And then you could have tied it with a little string to keep the leaves in place. And Jack said, "Oh, what a good idea. I can remember that. I surely can." And so he went to bed that night, and when he got up the next morning, his mama handed him another sack lunch, and out the door he went. And he walked 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 past those other 3 places, the farm where he'd hoed, the dairy where he'd helped to milk the cows, and the cheesemaker's place, until he came to the bakery, which wasn't very far away from the cheesemaker's place. And he could smell some really wonderful smells. And he remembered his mama's bread and the little pies that she would sometimes make, and cookies too. And so he knocked on the bakery door. And when the baker opened it, Jack asked if he had any work he could do. And the baker said, "Oh, Jack, you've come just in time, because I had somebody call in sick this morning, my head baker, and I really need some help. We have so much work to do. Come on in." And so he set Jack to kneading bread dough. Have you guys ever made bread dough? It makes some really strong arm muscles. And by the end of the day, Jack, who had folded and kneaded and laid the bread out to rise, because of the yeast, it makes the bread rise. And then he'd put it into the pans, he'd shaped it into the shapes that they were supposed to be, and he'd put them into the oven, and he'd pulled them out with a little paddle and set them down to cool. And he worked so hard because he was having so much fun. And at the end of the day, the baker was so pleased with Jack's work that he gave him, and Jack was anticipating, would it be pie, or would it be cake, or would it be cookies, or would it be bread? And he knew he'd be happy with any of that. The baker gave him a tomcat. And Jack looked at that tomcat and he said, "Oh, well, we could use a cat. I've seen a mouse or two around the house." So he was a little disappointed not to have even a piece of bread. But he took that tomcat, and he remembered what his mama had said the day before, and he found some nice wet leaves and a piece of string he'd put in his pocket that morning. And he began to wrap those leaves around the cat and tie them into place. And that cat was so befuddled what was going on that it just sat there and let Jack hold in his arms. But finally, it got back to its senses, and it began to scratch and yell and scratch and yell. And Jack, by the time he got home, that tomcat was long gone, and all Jack had to show for his day's work was a bunch of scratches on his face and his arms. His mama had no idea what this story was going to be, but when Jack told her, she just shook her head. "Oh, Jack, I know you can learn. What you should have done, instead of using that string to tie the leaves around, no, what you should have done was taken that string and just tied it around like its neck and chest and stuff, and let it right behind you like that." And Jack said, "Oh, what a good idea. I can remember that. I surely can." And so Jack went to bed that night. And the next morning when he got up, his mama handed him his sack lunch, and Jack headed out the door, through the gate, and down the road, past the farm, past the dairy, past the cheesemakers, past the bakers, until he got... Oh, wait. Did his mama tell him what he was supposed to do? Yeah, that was right. That was right. See, just another little side. These things happen in our heads, so I'm just telling you. Cover it better than I'm covering it, but I'm making it transparent because you can't see inside my head, but you need to, because you are storytellers, not story listeners. Well, you're story listeners too, but in this case, you're learning how to tell stories. So I'm just telling you, sometimes we forget things. It's really good actually to go over it in your head, which I did, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 or 8 times. I don't know. I did it once. That's not quite enough. It's been a while since I told this one. So keep that in mind. Go over your stories repeatedly. All right. So past the baker's to the butcher shop. And Jack really liked meat. And so he knocked on the door and the butcher opened the door. And Jack said, do you have any work that I can do today? And the butcher said, why, yes, Jack, what perfect timing you have. I just had, this is a town that's having some sickness. I guess we kind of know about that too right now. Come on in. One of my butchers had to stay home with her husband because he was not feeling well today, and the kids. And so she needed to watch the kids while he was sleeping. So come on in. We got time. We need help. And so Jack went in, and the butcher showed him what he needed to do. And Jack spent the whole day helping to cut the different slices of meat, helping to hang them so that they could cure if they needed to cure, and then helping to wait on customers. And Jack, at the end of the day, was so tired. But the butcher was so pleased with all of Jack's work that he gave him a nice big ham. And Jack loved ham, and he knew his mother was going to be so pleased with his work. And he remembered what she told him, and he had that piece of string again. So he took that piece of string and tied it around the neck of that ham and through the ham bone, and he dropped it down in the road behind him, like his mama said, and he began to walk home. And he walked home, and that ham was trailing in the dirt behind him, and it was doing all right until he got to that puddle, and then that rough patch of gravel, and then Jack wasn't aware of it, but there was a whole line of dogs and cats following him now, and they were running up and grabbing bites of that ham until by the time Jack got home, all he had left was that string with the ham bone tied on the end. His mama had no idea what this story was going to be either until Jack, actually she knew. She's very smart. Jack told her the story anyway. Jack, I know you can learn. What you should have done was take that ham and put it up on your shoulder and carried it home like this. And Jack said, oh, what a good idea. I can remember that. I surely can. And that night, Jack went to bed. And in the morning when he woke up, his mama had a sack lunch for him. He took that sack lunch and he headed out the door. And he walked 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 until he passed the farm, he passed the dairy, he passed the cheesemaker, he passed the bakery, he passed the butcher shop until he got to the post office or the UPS truck or the Amazon place. He got to that place where they needed help delivering mail. And this was before they had all these trucks and things like that. This is the time when they had wagons pulled by mules. And that wagon was laden down with stuff. And Jack was fascinated, and he went up and he asked the postal delivery fella, hey, mister, do you need any help delivering your mail today? And the delivery guy said, Jack, that's great. My delivery partner twisted his ankle yesterday. And I need someone to, when I stop at each house that has a package or a letter, if you know about letters, I need them to run down, jump down from here, take that up to the house and leave it for the people who live there. So you can do that for me. And so they traveled, and they spent the whole day traveling all around the county. And by the time the sun began to set, they'd only made it halfway They had so many packages to deliver that day. And the mailman was so apologetic. He said, Jack, I am so sorry. We're going to have to camp out here tonight. And luckily, I've got 2 blankets, so we're good. We'll just crawl under the wagon. We'll unhitch these mules, 2 of them, and give them something to eat and let them rest. And we'll rest underneath the wagon. You know, if it rains or anything, we'll be fine. And so that's what they did. The next morning, they got up and they finished their rounds. And the mailman was so pleased that he told Jack he was going to give him one of those mules. And Jack remembered what his mama said. And he's like, no, that's okay. You can just pay me. And the postman said, nah, Jack, I mean, you have been such a big help. I'm giving you one of these mules. And he wouldn't take no for an answer. Well, the thing is, the last round ended up over here, and then he was picking up the mail and going back the other way, but Jack was done with the mail. So he's still like a long way from home, so he's not real happy about this, but he got down. He got one arm up under that mule's front legs. He got the other shoulder up under the mule's hind legs. And he hoisted that mule up on both shoulders because it wouldn't fit on just one. And he began to walk. And he walked. And he walked. And he walked. And as he walked, that mule was braying in his ear, and his tail was swishing him up in the face. And he kept walking. And Jack, as he walked, he went from town to town on his way back to his mama's house. He made it to that second town, and this was a town where a rich man lived. And that rich man had a daughter who hadn't laughed at anything in years. And this made her father so sad that he had promised that he would give a bag of gold to the first person who could make her laugh. So sitting on the front porch was where the daughter was. When she looked out a long way off, and she saw an old man walking toward her with a bundle of some kind on his back. And then it got closer and closer. And then she realized that wasn't an old man. That was a young man carrying a mule. And she began to laugh. It was a little rusty at first. And her father was inside the house, and he heard his daughter laughing. And he came tiptoeing out because he didn't want to disturb this. And she kept roaring and get louder and louder. By the time he opened the door, she was rolling on the floor of the porch. And when he asked her what she was laughing about, she could only point out. And when he saw what was happening with Jack carrying that mule, he began to laugh. But he remembered his promise, and he got up off of the floor where he was rolling. He got up and he went inside, and he picked up that bag of gold, and he carried it out, and he handed it to Jack, and he said, "Son, you have earned a bag of gold because you made my daughter laugh. And now you might want to take that mule off your back. Don't know what got into you thinking that was a good idea. Set it down on the ground and get on its back." And Jack said, "Oh, what a good idea." And he took that bag of gold. He climbed on top of the mule's back, and he finished heading down the trail to his mama's house. And when he got there, he had to tell her the story. And from that day to this, Jack and his mama lived happily ever after. Both of them sitting in front of the fire, warming their feet in the winter, and doing the things that brought them and all of their neighbors joy. And that is the story of Lazy Jack. All right, I didn't have a chance to look and see if I can find this story online, but I'm going to go searching. If I find it, I'm going to put it down in the notes below here so that you can find it. I did, however, have a chance to look through some of the offerings that the library has to help you with your storytelling, where you can go and find some other stories. So I looked at Hoopla. You just need your library card and PIN number to log in. You can find it on our library page, kclibrary.org. Up at the top, toward the top, there's a thing that says books, movies, music, different things like that. And you can just click on digital books, and that gives you a bunch of different options. Hoopla is one of them, and BookFlix is another. And both of those have some fairy tales, and I will add in there how you can find those. Fairy tales are great because you don't have to worry about copyright. They're available to you to tell. And next week, I'm going to plan on doing a fairy tale you've probably heard. I haven't decided yet what it is, but you will probably have heard it. And if not, once you've heard me tell it, you will have heard it. And then you can learn to tell it for yourself. And there will be lots of places you can go and find that story. So, Lazy Jack, kclibrary.org. And don't forget, if you like to draw, come back tomorrow and see Miss Samantha, who is working on teaching all of anybody who's interested how to make their own comics. If you like this story, you could turn it into a comic, because stories come in all forms. And then on Thursday, you can also tune in at 1 o'clock and watch Miss Kaisha teaching you how to take stuff from around your house and do science experiments, art experiments, things like that. Make. So thank you for tuning in today. I hope you have a lovely day. Oh, wait, you need an activity. And here's the activity. Here's what I want you to do this week. So tell the story. Yeah, practice it. Think about your body motions this time. Last week, we talked about voices. This time, think about the different things you can put in there. You can do churning some milk. I don't know if you've ever done that. That's actually churning butter. I don't really know how to do cheese. You can look that up, though, and you can figure it out. And science and cooking have a lot to do with each other. Both are really good things to know for life skills. And that way you won't have to say to your mama every time, can you please feed me? You can start to feed yourself. Yay for that. Your mama will be so pleased because she knows you can learn. So you can do that. Body. So when you're walking, you can use your whole body. You can't see my whole body, but my feet are moving. Actually, earlier, all I was really doing was moving my hips. My feet, I lifted my heels, but I didn't move the rest of them. You can do it that way too. Move your arms. You could just do it like this. I loved to skip stones when I was a kid, so that's one of the things I know. And then I like to throw things, so throwing things really high in the sky. That was fun. But think about the other things. If he's riding along, maybe he's helping with the mules, making them go. Haven't really done that either, but I bet you can find how do you do reins by looking on YouTube or something. So think about that. Tell your story. And then once you've told it and you've got it in your head really well, do it. Tell the story without any words. Just do it with your body motion. And if it's easier, do it with one of the other stories that you've already learned. Goes with One Black Eye or the Anansi story. All right. Have a great week. Hope to see you again next week. Bye now.